to teach my grandchildren how to make homemade white yeast bread. There's many types of bread that it's all a variation of this basic recipe. But we're not going to go there today. This is just a basic white bread. And if my children and grandchildren learn to do this, it will be a blessing to them and all of the family.
And how many grandkids total do you have?
28. And some of those are great grandchildren. Not all of my grandchildren have these conveniences. So we're going to do it the old way that doesn't need anything special. We're going to start by taking our measuring cup, and I like to use bottled water for that because of the county water has chemicals that I don't want in my bread. And for 1 loaf of bread, we're going to put a cup and a fourth. There we go. And I guess I'm going to skip the heating on the stove, which the old folks would have done. And I'm going to go straight to the microwave. And I'm going to get this just lukewarm.
So for how long?
I've put it in there for 30 seconds. I may have to make it more. And I'm going to take, this is yeast. I buy a big container because I make a lot of bread, and I take it out of its package because there's not an easy way to reseal it. And it takes 2.5 teaspoons for 1 loaf of bread. And I'll put that right into my water. That's 2.5. And I keep my yeast like this in the refrigerator because it can go bad. If you buy it in the package, you sometimes get an old package and then it doesn't rise. I'm going to stir this a little bit and get it dissolved and let it sit here for about 5 minutes. And while I'm waiting for it to be ready, I will tell you about a little of my life, my birth. I was born 2 months premature. I weighed 3 pounds. I was so tiny, my dad could hold me, my feet in one hand and my head in the other with his hands touching. And my skin was so thin that you could see my intestines through my skin. I had no hair and I had no fingernails. And my dad said, "Oh, Mama, we will never raise this child." But I fooled him. But all due to my great-grandmother, who was half Indian. And she came and took over the care of me, and she didn't let anybody in the room that I was in. She kept it sterile. She kept no germs to come near me. And only Mama could come in and nurse me. And she fed me onion tea. She boiled an onion and fed me the juice of it. And the reason she did this was to keep me sedated. Onions have a sedative effect. And to this day, I love onions. I can eat onions at every meal, I think. But anyway, I grew and thrived. I was 3 years old before I saw a doctor. And then it was because I fell through a rotten porch. We had gone to visit some relative and their porch was rotten and I walked on it and fell through it. And I think that has been dissolved enough.
So who taught you how to make it this way?
I taught myself. My mother never made yeast bread, and to my remembering, I can't remember Gilbert's mother ever having made yeast bread except rolls. And but I wanted to make real bread. And I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of sugar. And 1 teaspoon of salt. Well, it don't want to come out. I'm afraid it'll come out too much. Okay. Salt. Then 3 tablespoons of oil. I use canola. Now that's all the ingredients except for the flour, and I use bread flour. You can use regular all-purpose flour, but once I learned how to make bread and it was with bread flour, I didn't change because I don't know how it, I'm sure it works, but the quality of the bread may not be as good. And I take a couple of big scoops of flour. I don't measure the flour because, whoops. That is a bay leaf. I keep it in my flour, also in my cornmeal, to keep the bugs out of it. I can't think what bug it is that gets in it, but you stir until you've got this all mixed good. Then I put in a couple of more scoops. Well, see how the dough is now? That's not, it's almost where I want it for now. So I'm going to put just a little bit more. Now, I'm going to make sure my counter is clean. So I'm going to wipe it off good. And then I'm going to dry it. Then I'm going to put flour on the counter. And smear it around. And I dump this dough. Okay, now I begin to take the flour up and fold it into itself. If you get enough flour on your hands, your hands don't stick to it. been quite a while since I have made it this way. This is the way my mother or my aunt or whoever made it this, back then. You just keep folding it into itself and pressing down. You're working air into the dough. After I'm through kneading it, I need to wash that bowl or get another one and put it in there to rise. This is what most people didn't like about making homemade bread because of the kneading that was required, but I've never, I like doing it. Okay, now that's more of the consistency I wanted. See? And then I give it a little twist here. Then I spray the bowl. In the pan. Then I put it into the bowl. And because it's kind of cool in the house, I am going to put it in the oven. So, somewhere away from the air conditioning to be warm enough to rise. The oven is the only place I know. So, Gilbert told me if I continue baking bread, we would have enough brick make us a house. Because my first loaves of bread were like brick. So they weren't so good, but I didn't give up. I kept trying. And finally, I don't know how many years it took me, but I finally made a decent loaf of bread, and I've continued to. I didn't always bake all the bread that I eat, but right now, I don't buy any bread. I do buy a hamburger bun once in a while, but that's about it. On a normal basis, I bake 2 loaves of bread every time I bake because it's easier to bake 2 than just 1. And so I bake 2 loaves, but I divided the bread into 3. So they're small loaves. I keep one, I give one to one of my kids and the other one to one of the kids. And Mark doesn't usually want one because he's always trying to lose weight and he loves it so much that he can't quit eating it. And I give it to Kathy and LaWanda, and they seem to appreciate it. Philip is not near enough, so I never know when he's coming, or I would bake him a loaf. But anyway, Kathy and LaWanda get the most of it. Sometime I take it to a church function, like a Lenten service meal that we have, and it's always appreciated, no matter what other that we have for that meal. The bread always seems to be appreciated because not too many people bother with making bread, but to me it just takes no time. We're going to take the dough out of the rising bowl, put it back on the flour.
And how long did it take to rise?
30 minutes. You never know how long it's going to take because the weather has something to do with it, and so does the warmth in the room. So if your room is warm, it can be done in 15, 20 minutes. But if your room is cold, it might take an hour. And I'm going to work this until there's no air bubbles in it. See the air bubble? Can you see that? Right there. See, that's a bubble. There's a bubble.
And what happens if you have air bubbles?
You'll have a hole in it. There may be no hole on the outside, but then inside it can have holes. And you don't want that. think that is kind of bubbles. Now I'm going to spray my pan. Oops, yeah. Now some people like to oil the top of their bread, but I don't. I like a crusty brown bread. Okay, I'm going to put this back in the oven because it's warmer there and let it rise. It will rise faster this time. $10 minutes, maybe 15. Okay, this is the bread hook we use. It's a dandy. Take a towel and wipe my bowl out so there's no dust or anything. It's clean, but it might have a little dust in it. Okay, we're going to start the process all over again. All right, we're going to start with a bottle of water, same as the other loaf. I'm going to put a cup and a fourth, same amount. Thirty seconds. More than that enough. Pour that in. 2½ teaspoons of yeast. Let it go until the yeast is mixed up good. And you turn it off for about 5 minutes. Yeast makes it rise. So the yeast has to be warmed and start its rising process before you put other stuff in it. The sugar helps it to rise, so you could put the sugar in now, but I wait and put them both in at the same time. Spray it with pan. It's ready to go.
Now, why doesn't this take as long as that one did to rise?
Because this kneads faster than I can. Well, a machine doing something that a hands do, it just does it better.
Gotcha.
We will come out with the same loaf of bread. They'll be just alike. The yeast is activating, I guess you'd call it. Okay, I'm going to check on this bread that is rising the second time. It's almost there. If I don't make it fall, take the towel off. Let it go just a little bit longer. Okay, I'm going to continue working on this second loaf. I'll put 2 teaspoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 3 tablespoons of oil. Cannoli canola is what I use. You can use any kind of vegetable oil or I have tried olive oil, and it gives it a taste that I don't like. So I didn't ever use it again. If you can use it, it's not wrong, but it's just a taste preference. Okay, I think I'll turn the oven on now. We've set the oven at 380 and we've put the bread in and it's starting to bake now. It will rise some more as it's baking when you put it in the oven at the same time you turn it on. This is the first batch. Okay, I'm back to the second batch. I'm going to turn my mixer on and I'm going to start adding flour. I'm going to put 3 scoops this time. They're not full scoops. And I turn the mixer on. Don't turn it on too fast to begin with because you'll swing flour everywhere. You don't want that. I'm going to wipe it down off the side, all the flour that's up there and not getting incorporated so that it will. I'm not worrying about how much flour I'm putting in there. What I'm wanting is a consistency. So we're not there yet. Start off slow to begin with and turn it up and let it turn it up. I have to hold the mixer down because it wants to jump around at this speed with that dough in there. See how the dough has left beside the bowl? The bowl is almost clean. Dough off of the hook till it's all off. Then you can take the hook out. And you take a little flour in your hand, just a little handful, and you sprinkle it over the dough, and then you have to kind of scrape it with your fingers up off the bottom. It's off the sides, but it's still some on the bottom. You get that all off and you've got it in your hand, and you do this kind of a bit till it's nice and smooth. Sometimes I just dunk it down in the flour bowl. Get a little flour on it. Get all those air bubbles out. Here's your little loaf. My pan is greased. I'm gonna put it in my pan now. Poke it if it's got a little bit bubble in it. Then you're gonna put a towel over it. I can't put it in the oven now, so I'm gonna just have to let it sit here. I just checked on the bread and it's doing good. To clean up your bowl and your spatula and all, the good way to do it, that's got about all I can get off of it. But I take the bowl like this and my fingertips like that, and I rub it. You see how it comes off? And then you don't have all that in your dishwater. Okay, I believe that bread is done. That's the first loaf. the second loaf is not quite ready yet to go in. So I'm gonna get towels and lift that out. Okay, I'm gonna put this in and see what happened to it. Isn't that beautiful? The first piece is mine, always mine. And you don't just press down on that knife. You saw it. And just that's the.
Ooh, look at the steam coming off of there.
Okay. Isn't that beautiful? And the smell is, so good.
It's delicious. Nothing like it.
Nothing like it. Can't be beat. I like to cut me a slice, butter it, and turn it upside down in a skillet until it's toasted. That's how I eat most of it. Second loaf of bread is ready to be taken out of the oven. See? Isn't it beautiful?
Beautiful.
Now that's the second one. That's the one done with the mixer. Okay, we're going to do this again on April the 7th. We're going to do homemade dinner rolls for Easter Sunday dinner. And the Lord bless you and keep you. Goodbye.